proposed action on the homeless initiative. And then secondly, I want to speak to the latest events around the shooting on Sunday morning and the police department's announcement that this was evidently gang related. So let us start with the homeless issue for a moment. And excuse me as I take you through the weeds just a little bit, but I do think it is important. I strongly support the measure, but I want to start by saying that being very clear on one thing. It is not my decision to bring this measure to the city council tonight with 24 hours notice. I believe that this should be aired over the course of at least a week, so that the public has the opportunity, those who did not participate in the drafting of this, any member of the public has an opportunity to be able to review it and to be able to comment. I don't think it's good process. And frankly, I think what we will see, as evident by the Sacramento Bee's editorial this afternoon, is that it's even difficult to have a conversation about the merits and the substance of the item when it's being rushed through. That being said, it is before us tonight. And the reason it is before us tonight, in fairness, is because the proponents of the initiative, the so-called Conway Initiative, are insisting that it be heard tonight. And they're basically saying, if you don't hear it tonight and pass it, we're going to break off negotiations and we're going to follow through with putting our signatures through and qualify their measure on the ballot, which would be impossible to meet. And because it's popular with the voters, it would pass. And so we're in a tough spot. So it is with politics and governance. It's often messy. So I say that, and then I want to talk about the merits of this, the compromise, and why I support it. It's not perfect. No legislation can ever be perfect, but I support it for this reason. For the last 3 years, I have been a pretty solo voice saying that if we want to reduce homelessness, that we need to change the law. Namely, everything that government is called upon to do to reduce homelessness at all levels is optional. And to be redundant, it's voluntary. It's optional and voluntary. And I think the results speak for themselves, because this isn't just about individuals, right? Well-intended individuals. It's about systems. And here's what government systems or even private sector systems do. They respond to what they're told they have to do. If something is not required, they may try, but they're not going to do it nearly as well as we would hope and expect. And so we have a homelessness crisis. We have gotten 14,000 people off the streets of the city and county over the last several years, since I became mayor, actually. But as we know, the problem has grown worse. And I've certainly done everything I've said I would do. I brought well over $100 million, probably closer to $200 million to this city through my advocacy and my reach and connections back at the State House. We have passed a comprehensive siting plan that was the first of its kind to pre-approve a number of sites. And frankly, implementation has been far too slow. Now, I don't put that on any one individual, but I go back to this systems question. There's no legal requirement that the city produce with any timelines to any particular number of beds or safe spaces. And there is no requirement to make a bigger dent in this problem. The community is frustrated. The business community is obviously frustrated. Advocates are frustrated, but most important, homeless people are suffering. And maybe second in importance is forget all the stakeholders, the lobbyists and everyone else, the public, the citizenry is frustrated. And so the reason I support this initiative tonight, and I will support it without amendments, even though if I had my way, I probably would amend it. I'd write it differently. Remember, I introduced the right to housing proposal in September, which says You can't enforce, i.e. you can't move people from where they are camping unless you offer them a safe alternative. So what is this compromise? It's really the same thing, maybe with a business-friendly coat of paint, because what it says is two fundamental things and important things. Number one, the city has to endeavor, as long as it has the money, to provide shelter, housing, or safe ground to at least 60% of the homeless population as defined by the 2022 point in time count. And we will know the results of that point in time count within a couple of months. Secondly, it says that for people living in tent encampments, the city may not enforce, they may not move people unless and until they offer them a safe and dignified alternative. Is it called a right to housing? No. Called a right to shelter? No. Does it have enforcement provisions that I might write differently? Yes. But I believe in the art of the possible. And the art of the possible means setting a trajectory in this city where we hold ourselves legally accountable to producing more shelter, more housing, and more safe ground for people. And that's exactly what this will do. It is worthy of support. And by the way, what is the alternative? The alternative going to be this initiative that is going to, would otherwise make it to the ballot that could potentially bankrupt the city? That's not an alternative. And so let's make progress and real progress. And to reiterate, no other city has voluntarily obligated itself to be legally bound to providing more shelter, housing, and safe ground. The city cannot do this alone. This will only be successful and meaningful if our county partners down the block join us in this effort. So I'm hopeful that after tonight that they will pass a comparable law. They will add mental health and substance abuse to their version of it because the city does not provide mental health services, the county does. And that together we will set a standard that will get thousands of additional people off the street and compel action where, again, everything that we do now is voluntary and optional. The law matters. And if we pass this and the voters pass this, the law will change for the better. Not far enough, not with some compromises that have to be made, but the law will change for the better. All right, let me go on to the second item, and then of course I'll be happy to answer your questions. The police department, of course, reported in the last hours that the terrible events of Sunday morning were the result of a gang war and a gang shooting. And I suppose that isn't surprising to me because we sort of suspected that that might be the case. But it compels me to say the following here this afternoon. The city has invested over the last year, and not all of it is out there yet, almost $3 million in direct gang prevention. And I am going to take before the city council a request for a significant increase in gang violence prevention dollars. We have great community-based organizations. We've got the Merv Brookins of the world that are out there working, Brother to Brother and other organizations working to diffuse conflict and working to avoid gunfights and tragedies. And they're doing a lot of good work. And, you know, I've been saying over the last couple of days, with the investments we've made and the relationship we have between ourselves, our police department, our community-based organizations, it's hard to know how many additional shootings we actually have prevented. But we have to do more. I don't think we have to have a bunch of blue ribbon task forces and major studies. I think we're actually on the right trajectory. We just need to elevate and enhance what we're doing with more resources for gang intervention. But that's not all. The police chief has told me over these last days that last year in 2021, the police department confiscated over 1,600 firearms that were in the wrong hands. And again, we'll never know how many tragedies that work prevented. But whatever the chief asks for that's reasonable and that's within means to get more guns off the streets, enable law enforcement to get more guns off the streets, I'm going to support, and we ought to do. Third, there are some issues that are beyond our jurisdiction and control. But like everyone, I have some very serious questions about how the alleged suspects who have been arrested thus far, with the lengthy records of violent, not just criminal, but violent behavior, found themselves out on the streets of Sacramento. And those questions need to be asked and answered. And finally, we are going to begin to see, I hope, the result of the $8.1 million investment that the city made just weeks ago through our American Rescue Plan dollars to help the downtown and the other commercial corridors in the be cleaner and safer. I know in the downtown area that over the coming weeks, we expect those dollars to result in additional physical security in the downtown, additional lighting, additional security cameras, additional presence, so that people can come downtown and have a great experience. And that's what we want. And that's what we are going to continue to fight for. We're fighting for our city here. And again, it's not just our city. These events happen in many cities, if not most cities in the country, but now the spotlight is on us. And so it's always a choice. You can either retreat and be defensive and hide from it, or you can look at it, analyze it, dig deeper, and elevate and increase what we are already doing. I've said this a number of times over the last couple of days, and I will say it one more time, and then I'm going to take your questions. Over the last 4 years, I ran for mayor with an intentional agenda, and that is to change the trajectory of what we consider to be a core city priority. It's not enough just to provide the basic services. Police and fire come first, no question. But what's happening in this city over these last years is that we are increasingly investing public resources, our own city funds, the federal funds, into the community, into workforce development, into youth, into gang intervention, into affordable housing, and into the creative economy, and so much more. And we need to continue that trajectory. And if this tragedy forces us to look inside to accelerate that trajectory and to elevate it and to invest more in preventing these kinds of tragedies, that's exactly what we should do, and it's exactly what we are going to do. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
On the homeless initiative, critics say that all three, the one that you brought to September, the community initiative, and this compromise, opens the city up to legal liabilities. You could be sued on two fronts, from neighborhood groups and homeless.
Yes.
How concerned are you about the legal liabilities
Well,
that these proposals present?
I don't want the city to be sued, but there's one way to avoid getting sued, and that is to produce more shelter and housing for people. See, this is the nub of it. I'm frustrated. It's not just my city. It's those in charge everywhere. We do a lot. You know, I'm proud of the shelters we've stood up and the work we've done, but there are no timelines. There are no production standards. There's no performance requirements. And so we should hold ourselves accountable and responsible. And if we don't meet the standards, then we should be sued. I don't want us to be sued, but there's an easy way out of that. And that is to more aggressively work to get people from the streets of Sacramento to safer places, preferably indoors, with the services they need and with a pathway to ending their homelessness with permanent housing and whatever support they need. And if we need to, invest more to do that, then we've got to find a way.
Mayor Steinberg, do you think the passage of this ordinance unravels the comprehensive side of the plan?
No, in fact, I think that it gives it new life. I mean, the comprehensive siting plan was an idea. And my colleagues worked very, very hard with little support, frankly, in putting forward their best ideas of where these facilities could be sited. After the fact, the city team came in and they vetted a number of them worked and some didn't. And so the comprehensive siting plan is out, it's 8 months. And, you know, we've now moved on to a couple of sites. There's a major downtown building that we are negotiating over. I can't tell you the location. There's 102 acres in South Sacramento. There's a site in the Science Center, obviously, in the North area. This ordinance or charter amendment will actually bring the siting plan back to life, because it's going to compel, now, not just me, as you know, the mayor in this form of government, which, you know, I have the bully pulpit, I have a lot of experience, skills, and tools, and no ability to implement. This will require now implementation, either of the comprehensive siting plan as written or as it changes over time, because we should always be on the lookout for new and better sites.
You don't tell us the timeline if this does pass, if this doesn't pass, what are the next steps? And what's the current status of this community? Is that qualified? Is that already?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but I think they're in the midst of gathering signatures. But as I understand it, the commitment is they're going to withdraw their and we'll all get behind this if it passes tonight. The requirement is within 90 days of voter approval, the city manager will identify and authorize at least 20% of the beds required under the law. You know, I wish this had been in place actually when we passed the comprehensive siting plan. We might be in a different place. But again, it's not about any individual. To me, it is about the systems. I've been in government for quarter century or more.
Is there a deadline that needs to be met?
Yes, the deadline is that the proponents of the signature initiative are saying to us, if we don't vote on this tonight, they're going to follow through on their more draconian initiative. Now, I'm going to put the question to my colleagues tonight. Do you really want to vote tonight? Or do you want to wait a week so that the public has a greater chance to hear this? That's what I would favor. But on the other hand, I live in an imperfect system here, and I didn't put this on tonight. And if push comes to shove, I'm going to vote for it, because I believe the substance of it is in the right direction in a very real way. And the proponents of the initiative have a hammer over the city. So that's reality.
Secret negotiations. Have you been a part of that, or is this something that
I haven't really been a part of it. I've been apprised. Of the negotiations, and you know what I have followed and asked, is this consistent with my original vision to require the city to be accountable for better results and greater production? And in the end, I believe it meets that test, even if it isn't perfect.
Mayor, on Sunday morning shooting, we've heard from a number of people who were there that night who were really distressed by how long it took to get emergency first aid to people who were hurt on the street. Have you heard any of those concerns from people, and why did it take so long?
Well, first of all, I have heard some of that, and believe me, I just have nothing but empathy for people who were hurt, family members who were whose loved ones were killed, and anybody had to witness all of this. I also believe that our first responders, our police and fire departments, acted admirably and heroically, trying to provide life-saving to those who, you know, they thought could survive. And I think they did a really good job. I mean, it is these sorts of situations, thank God, don't happen every day. And so they're chaotic. And I think they responded very well.
If I could just ask
Yes, go.
question.
Yes.
Last night it was revealed in terms of redistricting that the city attorney kind of made this bombshell announcement publicly. What's your reaction to this redistricting issue? Do you believe that the city attorney dropped the ball?
No.
And where does the city go from here?
All I know that it needs to be clarified. It needs to be clarified quickly because it's not fair to the city council members who thought they were representing one part of the city and find that they're representing a different part. It's not fair to the constituents who think they have had one representative for the past 4 months and it turns out they've had another. And so this just needs to be clarified right away. And by the way, I mean, going back in fairness, as I looked at the history over the last 24 hours, the old interpretation in 2011, the members, the redistricting went into effect immediately at around the same time, and the boundaries. And so what we've been doing over the last 4 months is what the city has apparently done for decades. And now the city attorney tells us it's not only wrong this time, it was wrong 10 years ago. And so there's only one answer, and that is to clarify it immediately. If it is necessary to change the charter, that's fine. I'll tell you what I would prefer. I would prefer that what has gone on over the last 4 months stays, because that's what is, that's what the people know. And 2022 will come quick enough in the elections. We'll have new representatives in some of the seats, and then we can go on. But obviously, it's a legal question. And so the city attorney has written an opinion, and now there's a lot of, if not pushback, just a lot of surprise. And she asked for more time to get some outside advice and to get a definitive opinion. I think we should get that answer. Wasn't, you know, it was, let's just put it this way, in the midst of all the other things we're dealing with, this was surprising. Yes.
Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. You mentioned the need for county assistance in the problem with the homelessness. And could there be a proposal creating a task force comprised of county supervisors and council members to address homelessness throughout the county and the city collectively?
There actually is such a task force. It's called the City County 2x2. And we meet on a monthly basis informally to discuss how we can work together. And, you know, the city and county have, I think, increased and enhanced their partnership over the last 12 months, the last 24 months. But now the city is going to hold itself legally accountable to more shelter beds and more safe ground and more housing. And it will only work if we partner with the county. That's true of these ordinances, and it's true of our overall approach to homelessness. So, you know, I wrote the Mental Health Services Act now 17 years ago, Proposition 63, and now generates $3.8 billion a year. All of the counties, so the state keeps some, but the money goes to the counties. The cities are not a mental health agency. We're not a health and human services agency. It's not what we do. But we're not turning it over to the county or shying away and saying, well, we're not going to do anything. All we're saying is that we have to be in full partnership together on all aspects of this if we're going to show the public that we can help more people and have a cleaner and safer city. Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll see you all at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much. Thank you.